My husband, completely drunk, made an absurd bet with the most daring woman in the capital. After losing, he declared in front of everyone that he would divorce me. I couldn't avoid that humiliating scene, nor his words spoken aloud as if they were just part of a game. He tried to minimize the damage afterwards, saying it was only temporary and that I was an understanding woman, that everything would be resolved with a grand ceremony when we remarried. I nodded silently, but when the divorce papers arrived, I didn't wait obediently in the mansion. Instead, I made arrangements with an old friend, and we left for the south on the same day he had planned his new wedding ceremony. I was no longer there. It was Yuli who told me about the bet. She was the third daughter of the Jalai family, the woman I had been traded for. It was spring, and the garden was full of yellow flowers. Yuli supported Mo Yun with a resigned smile on her lips, as if the situation were just an inevitable stumble. "Ah, my dear Seun, what a mess," she said. "Mo Yun was drunk in the spring pavilion with some friends and lost a bet. Now he has to divorce you. It's my fault for dragging him into this." It was as if she was apologizing without really apologizing. She said that the news had already spread throughout the capital, but that I should pretend nothing had happened. I put on a silver fox cape to face the bitter cold of that morning. There was nothing more absurd than that in the entire city, perhaps because it was so ridiculous. I ended up laughing out loud after the initial shock. I watched Yuli, who showed a mixture of guilt and a strange hidden pride in her eyes. I smiled back. If we didn't get divorced, it would be unfair to her, who had worked so hard to organize everything. Her expression changed for a moment, but she soon resumed her usual cheerful attitude. "It was just because of the drink," she insisted. "No one imagined that Mo Yun would accept such a bet." And then, without the slightest shame, she said that perhaps he didn't value our union so much because my family no longer existed. All the men had died in battle, and I had no one left to protect me, unlike other noble women in the capital. Before she could finish, I raised my hand and slapped her. How dare she speak of my father and my brothers that way? She froze for a moment, surprised, but soon lunged forward like a madwoman, grabbing the drunkard by the arms. The red marks from my hand still glistened on her face. Before she could even touch the hem of my dress, a soft, commanding female voice interrupted her. It was my mother-in-law. Just one look from her was enough for Mo Yun's personal maid to rush over and take him to his room. She then approached me gently, holding my hand tenderly, and said that I had been hurt by two reckless young men. She reprimanded them in her usual calm tone, trying to keep up appearances. I discreetly withdrew my hand and just smiled without responding. She frowned and continued, saying that this time Mo Yun had crossed all boundaries and that there was no way to pretend that nothing had happened. A man had to keep his word, according to her. But all I felt was exhaustion. That relationship had drained me of every last ounce of energy. I picked up a glass and slowly wet my lips before saying in a firm voice that we should get a divorce. Mo Yun didn't regain consciousness until the next day. By then, the story that I had slapped Yuli out of jealousy was already spreading everywhere. And the bet he had made about me was the talk of the town. They said I was a jealous and out-of-control wife, while Yuli, by his side, seemed almost like a martyr. If she were a good wife, would her husband bet their marriage like that? They whispered. Even her mother-in-law needs to control her temper. My maid, Helan, wanted to confront each of those who spoke ill of me, but I managed to stop her with difficulty. Then another maid came in with a message. Mo Yun had awakened. As soon as he saw me, he ran to me, his face beaten by the hangover, repeating that it was all his fault, that he should never have drunk so much, that he deserved to be beaten. We had known each other since childhood, and his eyes seemed sincere in their regret. When he saw my neutral expression, he changed the subject, trying to justify Yuli and saying that I had always misinterpreted their relationship, that she was just a spontaneous girl, that we had all grown up together, and that there was no reason to treat her like that. He even mentioned his mother, who was crying by the bed, saying that I had disrespected her and that she now wanted a divorce. "You're breaking our hearts," he said. Impatience took over his gaze. Now that everyone was talking about it, I thought maybe it would be best to go through with the divorce for now, just to calm the rumors and give me and his mother time to restore our relationship. "It's only temporary," he repeated. "Then we'll get married again with a big ceremony." He always had a way with words. I looked at the face that had once brought me happiness. Now it only brought me bitterness. I no longer knew if it was because of my mother-in-law's daily complaints, year after year, or because I knew that Yuli was among us the whole time, disguised as a sister. I swallowed hard, suppressed everything, and nodded. Mo-Yun smiled with relief and squeezed my hand tightly. "I knew you were the best, wife," he said. "I knew you wouldn't make things difficult for me." He asked me to stay at the country house for a while, that he would find someone from the Imperial Observatory to choose a good date, and then we would have a new ceremony. He said that, and left with a twinkle in his eyes. I stood there for a long time before opening the door. Snow was beginning to fall, first lightly, then heavily, until it covered the ground with a white blanket. It was like going back in time, to the day he brought a matchmaker to ask for my hand. At that time, my father was still alive, and so were my 3 brothers. They had just won a battle, and the Lin family was at its peak. But Mo-Yun chose that very moment to ask for my hand. My brothers almost killed him. The 3rd immobilized him in the snow, his face bloodied. But he smiled. "It doesn't hurt. Your brother was kind. If I can marry you, I can take 10 times that." He swore he would never let me be wronged. His eyes that day were filled with true love, and they made me cry. But it had been a long time since I had seen that look. I called him indulgent, and he accused me of being intransigent. In the end, that fragile balance between us tilted almost imperceptibly toward his friends, just like now. Even with a worried look on his face, he was already dressed in his riding uniform and held the whip firmly, showing how eager he was to leave. I nodded calmly, as if blessing the inevitable. "If that's the case, go ahead." He sighed with relief, but hesitated before leaving. "Aren't you angry?" Before, I would have ignored him. But now it was no longer the same. I replied that no. I was happy with the idea of getting married again. It was a lie, of course. As soon as I got into the carriage, I touched the thin letter hidden among my clothes. An old friend from my youth, now a teacher in the South, had been inviting me for months to accompany her on her return trip. Now that she had temporarily returned to the capital, she would be leaving in 7 days. This time, I decided to go with her. I heard that the horse race that day was won gloriously by Mo-Shan and his group. But there was a problem. Their rivals insulted Yuli, calling her vulgar and insinuating that she was involved with any man. Mo-Shan was enraged and even called the magistrate to settle the matter. Naturally, his promise to visit me after the Sai race was forgotten. Yu Yue, the messenger, told me everything with his head bowed and his voice subdued. Taking an unusually long time, I took a sip of my ginger tea and asked, "Is there anything else, Yu Yue?" He hesitated, and then replied that my mother-in-law had sent a message asking me to go to the pavilion by the lake the next day at noon. It took me a while to remember, but then I realized it was about the Jade Buddha, the one my brothers had prayed to when I was asked to marry. The amulet had been blessed by a respected monk, with the hope that it would protect me in place of my father and absent brothers. In our 2nd year of marriage, Mo-Shan said his mother was weak and asked to borrow the Buddha. He hugged me tenderly, whispering that he would protect me, that his mother, so devout, would value the amulet more than I did. I gave it to him out of love, but he did not keep his promise, and now I went to the lake to retrieve what was mine. My mother-in-law looked ill, as always, but there was a strange gleam in her eyes. She was clearly relieved to be rid of me. I did not exchange pleasantries. I just took the Buddha back. But she called me before I left. She said that according to ancient laws, a barren wife could be dismissed, and that I should have been sent away long ago, that it was only because of Moxian's generosity that I was still there. I didn't answer. Then she said that if I wanted to return to the family, it would only be as a concubine. She looked me up and down with contempt. Moxian's father had been an important scholar, and the whole family thought they were above everyone. Else, she always saw me as inferior, the daughter of a soldier. If it hadn't been for the forced fast I went on at the beginning, she would have replaced me with Yuli. But I wasn't blind. I clutched the amulet tightly and turned away. On my way out, by the lake, I ran into Yuli and Moxian. Yuli ran up to me with a sweet expression, grabbing my arm as if afraid I would run away. Moxian's friends laughed mockingly. "Be careful, Yuli. That unpredictable woman might slap you again, and we can't even hit back, right?" Everyone laughed, looking at Moxian as if to ask what he was doing married to someone like me. His expression became tense. Yuli, laughing naturally, approached me and whispered in my ear with poisonous sweetness, "You wretch, I won't have mercy on you next time." Then, suddenly, she pulled me hard into the frozen lake. We fell in together. She screamed for help, feigning desperation, and even asked why I wasn't helping her. My heavy, soaked spring clothes dragged me to the bottom. The shore became a pandemonium of voices, running and rescue attempts. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Moxian, the only one dressed in white, jump into the water. My heart sank when I saw him swimming toward me, but he passed right by me and went to Yuli, who was closer to the shore. I was rescued by chance by a passing boat. When I woke up, I was wrapped in blankets, but I was still shivering from the cold. Hylan was crying with swollen eyes. Another person present was Sinan, who looked at me coldly. "You had a lot of fun, didn't you?" I could barely speak. I was so weak. Still, I defended myself with difficulty. "If I told you it was Yuli who pushed me, would you believe me?" He stood up abruptly, knocking everything over, as if he were about to explode. But nothing calmed his anger. He was livid. "Why do you keep lying? Since when did you become like this? Everyone knows Yuli can't swim." "You, yes, you're the swimmer." His words cut like a knife. "Why would she hurt herself on purpose? Tell me." He looked more like a stranger than the young man who used to give me chestnut cookies on the backyard wall. I looked away. In a weak voice, I said only, "I'm sick. Why don't you invite Miss Yuli to come visit me? I promise I'll apologize to her as you wish." A maid helped Yuli inside. As soon as she left, she threw herself into Moxian's arms. "Moxian, I'm cold." Even though he was tense, he wrapped her in his cloak. Yuli was usually proud, but now she acted like a fragile young girl. She smiled contentedly as she looked at me, her lips pale. "Lady Sen, oh no, now I should call you Miss Lin. Moxian said you should apologize to me. You are now just a commoner. I am the legitimate daughter of the Minister of War. You hurt me. Kneeling before me is not too much, right?" Sitting on the bench, covered by a quilt, I slowly averted my gaze from Yuli's petulant face to Moxian. "Do you really think I should kneel before her?" He hesitated. His lips moved, but he was slow to respond. When he did, his voice was low. "Xun, this time, you really messed up. If you're enjoying this intriguing and engaging story, leave a like and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of our plots. Let's continue." He expected me to bow my head, and I did. But it was in that gesture that all the reticence inside me finally dissolved. Yuli smiled smugly, her triumphant gaze shining. I stared at them coldly. I raised my hand and threw the teacup I was holding, tightly at their feet. The shattering of porcelain echoed like thunder. The shards flew and cut Yuli's forehead, who screamed in shock, unable to believe it. "You've gone mad, Seun." In response, I slapped him with all the strength I had left. I grabbed his hair and slammed his face from side to side. "That's for throwing me into the lake. This is for falsely accusing me." Mo Xian rushed to separate us, but before he could stop me, I turned my hand against him as well. "This slap is for the years I lived blind by your side. Even if everything ended in ruins, I wanted that ruin to be complete." "Seun, that's enough," he shouted. With the strength of someone who no longer saw me as his wife, he pushed me to the ground. I felt the bones of my elbows and knees burn on impact. I was still holding a handful of Yuli's hair between my fingers. Mo Xian's face was dark, and the mark of my slap was stamped on his cheek. His gaze, once strange, was now pure disgust. "You've gone mad." He grabbed Yuli, who was crying softly with her face swollen, and before leaving, he uttered one last cold sentence. "You have disappointed me greatly. Seun." I fell ill. A high fever consumed me for nights on end, plunging me into nightmares. I dreamed of Mo Xian at 17, wearing a moon-colored tunic, standing tall and gentle under the bamboo grove, smiling at me with eyes that only saw me. But in an instant, that smile turned to sadness. He, still with his young face, said, "Seun, I'm sorry. Don't forgive me." As if asking me not to forgive the man he had become at 24, I said yes. I slept for 3 whole days. When I woke up, I saw Silan with her eyes swollen from crying, yet smiling, relieved to see me alive. I touched my face and felt how thin I was, my bones protruding under my skin. Silan told me that Mo Xian had appeared only once, upon learning of the severity of my illness. He stood at the door, but didn't have the courage to enter. He said, "It was the punishment I deserved." He informed me that the new ceremony was scheduled for a few days later. Because of my behavior, the Sen family no longer accepted me as a wife. Mo Xian would marry Yuli as his main wife. I would become a concubine. He would compensate for the ceremonial bow that Yuli did not receive that day with daily acts of submission. Silan, furious, said that he used to treat me like crystal, that a simple wound on me would leave him desperate. "How can someone change so much?" she asked. I stroked her hair. "People's hearts change. The pure heart of a young man is rarer than stars in the sky." The rush to marry Yuli seemed to come from the fear that she would grow old without a husband. They even accepted the absurdity of holding the wedding and welcoming the concubine on the same day, but my ship would leave for the south exactly 3 days later. The plan to humiliate me would be thwarted. We hurriedly sold my old inheritance for silver coins. We left only a few precious objects as souvenirs. On the eve of my departure, Yuli had a peach-colored wedding dress delivered. The maid who brought the package looked at me with contempt. "This is concubine Lin's dress. The lady said to tell you that the side entrance is narrow, so the concubine must enter alone." Before I even entered the house, they were already calling me a concubine. I looked at her silently. Silan picked up a chamber pot that hadn't been emptied in 3 days and poured its contents over the maid, then chased her away with a broom. We laughed together. We laughed loudly. The wedding between the Yin families was grand, but the event was interrupted halfway through when a servant came in frantically shouting that the honored concubine had disappeared. The groom's face turned pale. He ignored all the guests and ran after me, leaving the bride behind. What should have been a celebration became a laughingstock in the capital for months. When the rumors began to die down, I was already settled in the south with Silan. Thanks to my friend Van Roo, who had founded a school for orphaned girls, or girls from poor families, I found a new purpose. The school offered free education, and after the students learned to read and write, Van Roo found teachers to teach them embroidery, cooking, cosmetics, and winemaking. This way, they gained a skill to survive. There were many students, but few teachers. I had barely arrived when I took on the role of teacher. I taught classes and took care of everything until Ceylon found work helping other women with embroidery. My days, which had been so idle before, became long and hard, but somehow more alive. I slept exhausted but fulfilled. After 5 years confined to the Seine courtyard, I understood that there is a huge world out there, and that women can also make a place for themselves in it. When those girls' bright eyes fixed on me, I felt an inexplicable warmth in my chest. Van Roo was right. We must leave something worthwhile in this world. Refuge, support, a place to belong. I barely touched the ground with my feet from so much work, and I hardly thought about the capital anymore. My past with Mo Xian seemed like another life. But one day, during a break between classes, I heard an anxious voice behind me calling my name. I was stunned. I finished the lesson without rushing and led Mo Xian, who was waiting for me at the door, to the reception room. He was thin, dejected, his beauty faded by an unkempt beard. As soon as we were alone, he tried to hug me. I pulled away. "Please behave yourself." A flash of anger crossed his eyes. "Xiun, how long are you going to keep this up?" I laughed softly. Until now, he still thought I was throwing a tantrum. "I have a lot to do with the girls at school. I can't entertain you." I turned to leave, but he grabbed my sleeve tightly. He said he hadn't eaten or slept, that he had tried everything, that he had used all his contacts to find me, that he had even been beaten by his mother as punishment, that he couldn't live without me. But he was the one who left me on that frozen lake. He was the one who signed the divorce papers. We should have been strangers to each other. That was just a temporary measure, he insisted. With a frown, he seemed to be fighting my coldness. "Are you hurt because I married Yuli? Or because I thought about making you my concubine?" "None of that will happen. I'm not going to marry her. I'll stay away from all of them. You will be my only wife. Always." His voice was almost a whisper, as if he were afraid of scaring me. I shook my head. I let go of his hands, no matter how hard I tried to repair it. A broken mirror always has cracks. And besides, did he forget that I never liked used things? When Mo Xian left, he walked unsteadily, his face distraught, his steps dragging. When she heard what had happened, Van Roo was furious, saying that I had been too kind. She wanted to gather all the sisters from the Women's Academy to beat him up and wash our souls clean with justice. I laughed heartily. Let the boys learn from this. Van Roo slammed her fist on the table. A woman must be fierce, otherwise these scoundrels will think too highly of themselves. She, who was once a sweet and cunning young girl, was now direct, sharp, shaped by her own scars. But those marks did not hold her back. They were what set her free. I thought Mo Xian's pride would prevent him from looking for me again. But a few days later, as I was walking with Ceylon to the field where I would be teaching, I was surprised by men in his service. They knocked me unconscious and tied me inside a luxurious carriage with elegant details and plenty of space. There was no sign of Ceylon. Mo Xian sat down in front of me. He ran his fingers through my hair, carefully brushing it away from my face. "Xiun, if you cooperate and come with me, nothing will happen to your maid." I trembled with rage, wanting to scratch his skin, but my hands and feet were bound. "Is this what you intend to do now, Mo Xian? Kidnap me?" He smiled, regaining his natural arrogance. "That question should come from me, Xiun. You were the one who disappeared, and you treated me so coldly. But there was something else. Have you forgotten who I am? An officer of the Empire. And you, no father, no brothers, all dead on the battlefield. The Lin family titles have been revoked. Now you're nothing but a commoner. Do you really think Van Roo can protect you?" His eyes had a poisonous glint. "She only remains standing because of the third prince's affection. And when he closes the cage, she'll be just another caged bird. You too, Seun. I can keep you in a cage forever. Don't resist. Obey. You have no chance. I stared at him for a long time. My chest tightened as I realized that this young man with light eyes, for whom I had once cried, was now an unrecognizable stranger. He held my gaze for a moment. Then he looked away, approaching slowly, as in the old days, whispering, "We grew up together. We loved each other. It was supposed to be forever. But I felt nothing anymore. I don't love you anymore. I don't want to love you, and you can't hold me." He laughed sarcastically, but my voice remained firm. "Don't, you see? The carriage has stopped." His arms stiffened, and then I heard, 11U. The carriage curtain was pulled up forcefully. A firm hand pulled back the canvas, revealing 11U's face. Serious, determined, sword in hand, emanating a cutting coldness. "Forgive me for the delay, miss." Moxian's face twisted in surprise, followed by hatred. "What? You were still with him? You chose that servant over me?" But 11. You was never just a servant. He and the others grew up with my brothers. When I got married, my father, fearing for the future, left them with me as a dowry, as protection. But Moxian's mother picked on them, saying they were brutal. Over time, he also became annoyed that they only obeyed me. Conflicts arose. To keep the peace, I was forced to send them away. And how foolish I was to give in. They were all the support my family left me. I didn't need to explain anything. I looked Moxian in the eyes. 11U is simple. And you're not even worth his shadow. His face paled. His men were defeated. There was no way to resist anymore. 11. You let go of me and helped me out of the carriage. Moxian's voice came out weak, almost a whisper. You can leave me. But what about your father's death? Of your brothers? Of the Lin family soldiers? My hand trembled. That pain was an eternal wound. 5 years ago, the armies went to war. The Lin family's 30,000-strong army was ordered to invade the counties dominated by the enemy. They won 6 consecutive victories. But in the 7th county, surrounded by a fierce counterattack, my father, my 3 brothers, and thousands of soldiers fell. When reinforcements arrived, their bodies were on the city wall, pierced by arrows, still standing like dead sentinels. Behind the door, the corpses formed a mountain. I myself brought the coffins back to the capital. The mourning people took to the streets in tears, but then came the decree. A letter of treason had been found in my father's documents. The emperor, even though he spared us from execution, stripped us of our titles, confiscated our house, and forbade the funeral. I fell into despair. Moxian held my hand and swore to clear their names, but now he was using that promise as a bargaining chip. Come back with me, Seun. Only I can help you avenge your family. I stared at him. His eyes, red as they were, still had a glimmer of hope. It was his last card, but my trust had long since dried up. I remained silent. Then I spoke, without emotion. Moxian, you should mind your own business. ZQ and the others aren't by my side by chance. They've traveled far and wide, following my orders, investigating that massacre. I went south to avoid suspicion, hoping the culprits would expose themselves, and that will soon come to light. Moxian bought a house near the school. Like a stubborn young man, he showed up every day, rain or shine, waiting to see me. Salon despised him and cursed him as best he could. But he remained there, impassive. I asked Zion to ignore him, to pretend he didn't even exist. Ziku, on the other hand, couldn't contain himself. He confronted Moxian twice. When I was informed, he appeared before me, crestfallen. I overreacted. Please punish me. I sighed. You are a court official. Next time. Wait until nightfall. Go to a dark alley. Don't let anyone see you. Zian's eyes suddenly lit up. With Zilan and Ziku protecting me on both sides, Mosian could barely get close to me before I entered the school. This went on for months, until one day he appeared holding a huge sugar figurine, looking at me with a mixture of loneliness and hope. I saw this on the way and remembered how much you liked it when you were little, he said. The figurine was made to look like a girl with 2 braids, a perfect replica of my childhood. I remembered the day I almost got lost running after a candy seller, and how it was Mosian, 2 years older, who rescued me. That day, he even used his own money to buy me a sugar figurine to cheer me up. I still remember the taste, sweet and comforting. After so many months of ignoring his presence, I looked at him directly for the first time. His eyes lit up, and his expression came to life, but my voice came out empty. Do you remember how we lost our only son? A shadow fell over his face, his lips trembling. It was the maid in the backyard. She put something in the soup. After drinking it, I felt excruciating pain. And you, drunk for 3 days, unconscious after being served by Yuli and her friends. I demanded an investigation. The maid died that same night. No evidence. Yuli was protected by her mother. You swore she would never do such a thing. And our son disappeared without justice. Since then, your mother began to mention the idea of bringing in a concubine to give you an heir. You refused, but the disappointments piled up. The separation was not impulsive. It was the consequence of years of being ignored, betrayed, silenced. When you left a letter and a fortune in silver, delivered by Van Roo. I didn't read the letter. I sent the silver back to the capital. Van Roo smiled, but then sighed. Sioun, the moment you've been waiting for has arrived. She muttered something as if the sky were about to change. I asked if this wasn't what she wanted. She remained silent for a moment, then smiled softly. The day I hope for will never come. She was still beautiful, the most enchanting woman in the capital. But now her eyes showed an ancient weariness, as if she had lived 100 lives. She was right. Times had changed. The emperor had fallen seriously ill. A scandal had erupted. The Minister of War, allied with corrupt judges, had forged a letter to frame my father, embezzling military funds. The news shook the empire. Even though he was ill, His Majesty demanded an investigation. Months later, dozens of officials confessed. The minister tried to kill himself, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth had come out. The following spring, the emperor died. The throne passed to the third prince, Fu Yuan, the empress's son. Before taking office, Fu Yuan came to the south. He brought 2 imperial decrees. One restored the posthumous titles of my father and my brothers. The other granted me the title of princess, in recognition of the evidence I helped gather. I knelt in gratitude. Van Roo did not. She remained standing, cold. Everyone knew that Van Roo and the prince were made for each other, but out of fear of the empress, he was forced to marry another. Since then, she had become a precious memory in his heart, an eternal what if. When Fu Yuan arrived, he was full of life. When he left, he was devastated. I asked Van Roo about their conversation. She took a sip of wine and smiled. He wanted to make me empress, but how with so many legitimate and secondary wives? He said I would be the only one. She laughed without joy, and I replied that I am jealous, that if he married me, I would not tolerate any other. Fu Yuan had just conquered the throne. He could not give up his marriage alliances, so I asked him, "If you love me so much, why don't you abdicate? Why don't you come live with me in seclusion?" He couldn't. The throne was his dream. Van Roo smiled sadly. He said he loved me, that he could have taken me by force as a concubine, but he preferred to come in person. And I replied that I would seduce him, kill him, and then incite his ministers to rebellion. Perhaps he believed me. Perhaps he felt fear or pity. His bravery was not enough to fight for us. She leaned on my shoulder, whispering, "To the Empire, a beautiful woman is just a decoration, no matter how much they, like her, who would really care, a decoration. Thousands of women believe in the lie of eternal love, but a man's heart can always escape. A woman's cannot." I began to understand why Van Roo said that the day she waited for would never come. My new fiefdom was where the girls' school was located, perhaps because of Fu Yuan's influence. Perhaps because of my own merit. 2 weeks after her coronation, I returned to the capital to receive my title. The sky was clear. As I entered the city, I came across a group of exiles being taken away. Among them, I saw Mo Xian, ragged and chained. The verdict in the case had already been declared. The mentors were executed by 1,000 cuts, the men of the family beheaded, the women turned into slaves, and their property confiscated. The Sen family was also implicated for their connections to the Wei family. Even after the marriage was broken, the old Mrs. Sen accepted Yuli as her daughter-in-law and allowed her to remain in the house. On the day of the arrest, she grabbed Yuli, who was being taken away to slavery, and begged for mercy. She was kicked several times. She did not survive. She died in prison, once powerful, now forgotten. Fate changes with the wind, from afar. Mo Xian's eyes still searched for me. There were tears in them. I stood there, motionless. I asked Zion to deliver a package. Some silver coins and dried food, a bribe for the guards, to give to him. "Consider this a thank you," I whispered, to the young man who once held my hand and promised me the world. From now on, separated by mountains and rivers, we may never meet again.